Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Cause Before Symptom. I am back, your esteemed guest host, Urban. It is the 6th of July, midnight here on the East Coast. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. James asked me last minute to fill in for him while he had to take care of some business. I'm not necessarily sure what it is, but probably not any of my business as of yet until he gets back. If he needs to tell me, he can tell me. That's up to him, but I'm happy to fill in. Gives me a chance to see all the usuals. How's it going, Philip? I see Philip in the chat. Let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger for everybody. Yeah, so James is going to be out for a couple of days. I'm not necessarily sure how long he'll be out. He might be out for a day or two. He might be out for a week. But some of the nights I may not be here. But if I'm not going to be here, I'm pretty good about finding something to either air or to play, and then we can talk about it when I get back, just because James and I like to respect the people who show up here every night. So if you are usual and you tune in to see James, or some people might tune in to see me when I guest host, if you see that I'm guest hosting and you tune in and you're usual, to you as well, but we like to honor that. So even if one of us, in the rare occasion that I'm not able to fill in, I like to leave something just to acknowledge that people, that we know that you guys are going to be here even if we're not. So tonight we're going to dive into some of the crazy stuff that I've been looking into. It's pretty crazy, but I mean, it's one of those things that connects a bunch of threads. We're going to talk about plasma technology tonight, just because I don't know, a lot of things are coming to a head, it feels like, at least. In the last couple of months, we've had a lot of major events happen. We've had Epstein files released. That's a big thing. People are seemingly starting to wake up very rapidly. And the only real question that's on my mind is it going to be on time? Is it going to still be early enough? Because we have people in the 60s, the 70s. We had Myron Fagan. He even published his expose on a vinyl record. So that's how long people have been trying to warn us. And up until recently, the last 10 years, I didn't wake up that long ago. It's only been about 3-4 years for me max, maybe even 3 years. So I'm pretty new to the game as well. But at the same time, I'm kind of young. Let's see, Philip says, nice hear about the TZLA plasma healer. I'm not sure if I've heard of that specifically, but the reason that I say it connects a lot of threads is kind of the point that you just kind of raised inadvertently, was that this seems to pop up in all kinds of different places on the internet, especially people who have, severe medical issues. Some people have found technology that has obviously been hidden away and made hard to get, that it may, I've never necessarily, I don't know if it does or doesn't, but if they are hiding it, if they don't tell you about it, if it's something that you go to a doctor and you tell them about it, just raising these things, it makes them look at you weird. I think it's worth digging into, because if they're that worried about you thinking for yourself, oh no, if you're thinking that, you can't think that. Those are wrong thoughts, thought crimes. That's what George Orwell called them, thought crimes. But as a matter of fact, there have been some interviews, lectures by somebody named Leuren Moret, and some people may be familiar with her because she did the Ancient Bloodlines video. I'm actually let me go ahead and see if I can pull that up. One moment. Let's see. Here it is. Okay, let's make this a little bit smaller. You know how it goes, guys. Got the it's like I feel like whenever I'm sitting here messing with OBS trying to get caught up on something while I'm live, I always feel like I'm like at the back of the stage pulling all of the strings, like you go to an opera house or something and they actually have to pull the strings to open the curtain. That's what I feel like I'm doing. Okay, here we go. So this is just like I put together James's series in like a huge page with all of the information that I had on it. But Leuren Moret is who that's not necessarily what we're going to cover today. But Leuren Moret is the one who did the Ancient Bloodline series with the Zoroastrian bloodlines being connected to the Italian papal bloodlines. And so that's who I'm talking about. But the reason that I brought her up is because she originally started she worked at, briefly, Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, very, very briefly. She worked there seemingly for about a year, and she didn't like what was going on there. She compares it basically to the mob. So like once you're in, you can't get out. So she got out very quick is what I'm assuming. But she got known because she talked about what was really going on with nuclear weapons technology. For instance, Fukushima, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, all of these different bombings that happened. She actually says that they're not different equipment. This was planned because all of these nuclear devices have to be built to, they were built exactly the same because they have to be detonated at specific harmonic coordinates. And so if you don't have them configured perfectly, they're not going to work. And so she talks about how this is actually just a high-level warfare program. So for instance, what is the NASA space program? A lot of people get really, like, as soon as you start to talk about that, before they even hear you out, they're shut off from it. And that's a problem, because I feel like you're missing out on a big piece of what's going on there. So the space program, it seems in my findings recently that when they say that they are going to conquer space, the final frontier being space with air quotes, they mean the human mind. This is human husbandry. This is basically, we're going to enslave the whole world, and that's what they mean by they're going to conquer space. So they're kind of using language to fool you there. But what happened, obviously we know that Werner von Braun, who was a Nazi who came over during Project Paperclip, was the first head of NASA. So this is the Nazi master race enslavement program. But the Nazi master race and eugenics, that is actually human husbandry. That's what all these people in Silicon Valley are invested in. And that's evident for a few different ways. But the rotary symbol is a gear. It's a cog, obviously. So what does that mean? It means machinery. It's the symbol. The symbol is the easiest way to learn about anything. Even if they're vague from the symbol, they chose the symbol for a reason. It's like you choose this symbol to represent what you're about. And so we know the Fabian Society, the wolf in sheep's clothing, that one's easy. But a cog, a gear, machinery. You got photos with Hitler. He's standing in front of the rotary logo. The Nazis did adopt the logo, the cog. And so I've got a good amount of information that I found on the Internet Archive from Leuren Moret. Here we go. Here's the whole section on my Substack. I've been slowly uploading the different content that she had put out because her website, I think she's passed away now. As far as I understand, she's doing this stuff in early 2000s. She worked at Lawrence Livermore back in like the 80s, early 80s, I think, and then come to modern times. I've got some interviews from her on UC Berkeley's public access show, Frank Moore interviews with her. So she's been doing this for a while. I think she has passed away, just could be from old age, you never know. But yeah, I've been trying to keep this stuff alive, and it actually has led me to some really interesting conclusions. And that's what we're going to talk about. Back to plasma. I think all of this is the same technology. It's all the same technology. There's no difference between Nikola Tesla's technology, which we know that Fred Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, had exclusive access to that technology for the FBI. Okay, we have Leuren Moret, who's been talking about how these are part of what's called tectonic warfare. This is a warfare program where they create using geoengineering. So geoengineering is the same as nuclear technologies, the same as Tesla's technologies, the same as plasma, free energy. So it's all the same thing. I don't think there's any difference between it. I think it's all part of the same torus. They use the torus as the shape that is behind that. We're going to take a sneak peek into it. If we have to do 2 episodes, we will, because I expect to be here for another night or 2 at least. But if not, I'm going to continue the series on my own time, because it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. There's a guy called Malcolm Bendall who's done a Bendall engine, is what it's called, and he's actually put together information on how people can retrofit existing standard engine with this technology. Now, I don't know anything about that type of engineering. That's way out of my domain, but at least from what I can gather, he's pretty much given anybody the information they need to build one of these things if they had enough time and resources. But I think a lot of things are kind of coming to a head now, and it's kind of blows my mind that this has ever been released to the public. And if it has been released to the public, I take that as a sign as things are coming to a head, because it's almost like release it to the public because you're already so secure and you've already built lasers in space back in the 80s under the Star Wars program. It's like, okay, maybe they're comfortable letting it out now that they don't think anybody can touch them. And that remains to be seen, because the only way that anybody can do anything is simply by being educated. You have to know that you don't know anything. I don't know anything. As much information as I got on my Substack, and that is a whole lot of information I have amassed in a very short amount of time. But really all it does is it gives me more questions at the end of the day. But I think I've been able to do really amazing things with the amount of information that for the first time ever in world history has been made available. And we talked in one of our previous episodes about how it was once the early cyberpunk collective in the early days of the internet started uploading sacred text from all around the world and then scanning it. And the stuff that James and I have access to now, I mean, for the most part, it's fully transcribed too. Or we can do something called OCR. I think it's called optical character recognition. You know, you use the black and white scan to detect the letters. R. Gertison, thanks for being here. He says, great to be here. Hi, Urban. Great to see you again. Thanks for helping Pastor James. I appreciate it. Glad that you're here. I was kind of hoping to see Boots. I don't know how last time I was hosting the show, I know that he said that his wife did have unfortunately had a stroke, and hoping that he would be here so that I could ask him how she was doing. But I'm glad to see everybody else as well. But obviously I would like to hopefully hear some good news. Maybe somebody else, if you guys know what's going on, you could update me. But yeah, we're going to just kind of dive into it. There's a lot to get into. Okay, let's see. Let me bring up some slides. One moment. I'm just fixing it. There we go. So we're going to talk about a few different subjects. We're going to probably watch a couple clips too. Let's see. R. Gertison, he says Boots was here on Friday. He was thankful for all of the prayers. It sounded like his wife's back home now. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Really sucks to hear that, but I do know that people really does help people if they know that they have a community. And even on the internet, I believe, even more so in some cases, because I've had, you know, some people who, you know, pull the wool over your eyes. Sure, that's to be taken, if you've been on the internet since you were a teenager, since like I have, you know, you've seen people like that. But then also I've had some of the most authentic relationships with people from parts of the world that I never would have been able to meet before had I not been born in the time that we're in now. So I know that it really helps. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. Maybe we'll split it into a few different nights. I'm not trying to go into anything crazy that people can't follow along. That's a big thing for me. We're going to also go over a few words and terms tonight. Let's see. As a matter of fact, we'll go ahead and start with that. But let me get that ready. One moment. I'm just putting a few things together real quick for people. Okay. So I did a video a couple months back. It must have been now, but it was on the ionization of the sky and geoengineering in short. But the what we focused on was how the sky is basically electrified, and that's why if you pay attention to the Schumann resonance, which I could actually pull that up for people now just so that people can see it. Let's see. So yeah, this is what Schumann resonance looks like, and it measures. Oh, here we go. So this is the one that most people are familiar with, and basically it measures. If you zoom in, I'm not sure it says. Measures ELF and VLF, which stands for extremely low frequency and very low frequencies. There's different measurements here. Another good place to visit is the VLF Open Lab observatories, and you can view different. For instance, this is the VLF. If you read right here in the white, the VLF, very low frequency E field. And you can see the scale, the color scale, red to black. Black is minus 100 decibels, and then red is zeros. So it's pretty active today. What you can see here is when the sky becomes basically ionized, you can pick up all of that ionization in the sky. And so that's what the video was about, and what came up. Absolutely, yeah. They use pretty much all of that stuff. If they're going to have somebody paid to go and put these towers up, it benefits them first, and then if you get anything from it, you're going to pay for it. That's just the way that it works. So it's not for the good of humanity. They haven't tested them yet. They just kind of put them up, and we're going to figure that out later, see how bad it is, and then maybe we'll settle. Doesn't, but just write a check. So plasmas come up in this, and so back to the words that we were going to cover. I'm going to start off with words from that video, and we're going to recap there, and those are going to kind of segue into the new words. So artificial ionospheric mirrors, AIMS, these are high-density plasma balls artificially created and sustained in the upper atmosphere to bounce and steer weaponized frequencies. Global radiation targeting allows controllers to bounce directed energy weapons and ELF, extremely low frequency waves, off the sky, specifically the metasurfaces, the small little particles that are kind of kept in the sky. They stay up there for a little while, but then they'll come back down and they'll have to put more up there. So that means that they have to have this being pumped into the sky constantly. That has a dual purpose, because basically, given enough time, once this gets into everything, that'll put everything into the network. And so basically they're turning everything into programmable matter that way. It destroys the concept of geographical sanctuary. One word that we ought to probably start with before we get too far into it, I should give you a definition for what is plasmonics. And we'll do that from the Devil's Dictionary by Anab Whitehouse. And now this is available on his website for free. The Devil's Dictionary by Anab Whitehouse. And I've got links to all that on my site, or my Substack. Here we go, Plasmonics. Zooming in. Yeah, it's nonstop. So plasmonics, this is a field of study which explores and seeks applications for the physical phenomena which occur on a nanoscale in conjunction with the interface of particular kinds of metals and dielectrics, polymers also. These are materials that serve as electrical insulators, which become polarized when exposed to an electrical field, and among other things can enhance capacitance or energy storage in electronic circuits. A plasmon is a quantum of plasma oscillation, and plasmonics explores the properties of such plasma oscillations and how they can be manipulated on the nanoscale. 1 second. These coherent oscillations are associated with electromagnetic waves that exist along the nanoscale interface that juxtaposes a dielectric and a metal. Various metals have different plasmonics properties, and artificially designed non-porous metals have an array of plasmonic properties. Hey, Boots, we were just talking about you. Glad to hear you. Or glad to see you. I guess. I don't know why I said hear you. Yeah, we were literally just talking about you. Let's see. Boots says, hello, Urban and Warrior family. Glad to make it here. If we could all hit the like button to help out our host, thank you. Yes, Boots, I appreciate seeing you tonight. We wanted to just check in with you. Last time I guest hosted the show, I know that you said that your wife had unfortunately had a stroke. And so I kind of was hoping that you showed up so that I could see if she was doing any better or how things were. So yeah, I'm glad to see that you made it here tonight. And yes, please hit the like button. It really helps myself out if on my channel or on James's channel, especially please do, because that lets him know that I'm doing a good job as guest host, and because I think James deserves it. The fact of the matter is, if you find somebody like James, he used to have, man, it was like 100,000 on TikTok, but then they banned him because you can't tell the truth on TikTok, you know, that's just the way that it is. And he used to do a lot of cool stuff like a Bot or Not game show. We would catch DARPA bots. It was fun. I remember because I used to get done working at that time, and so I would come out and I was tired when I was done working, and so I would sit there and I would watch James on TikTok. Now this was a couple of years ago now, and either way, he's on Rumble, and he's kind of like being kept right at 2,000. So I feel like when you find somebody who has a couple thousand subscribers and they're relatively unknown, they probably have something to say that they don't need to have a lot of people hearing it. And James has said quite a few times that once you go past 1 million subscribers, you're going to get a visit from either the government, or maybe they can con you or manipulate you by saying, hey, we're just going to be your manager and your agent. But you're going to get a visit from somebody, and you're going to have to find your niche, I guess. You're going to have to find a place to fit in and not cause too much trouble, or you're going to have a lot of bad actors enter your life once you go over 1 million. So that's why I'm kind of comfortable. I mean, I don't necessarily need 1 million followers. I mean, I don't want to be famous. It's the last thing I want is to be famous. So let me finish the definition here. Plasmonics has potential ramification for biophotonics. That's a big associated word. Biophotonics. Consequently, not only does plasmonics carry possible applications for such fields of study as optogenetics, which is the use of light to turn genes on and off. Yep, it's a big area of study, but as well, it raises questions to how and to what extent biophotonics and plasmonics might adversely affect or suppress the health of a person's biofield. Okay, these are interesting. I feel like these probably people, if you were anywhere near the East Coast, you may see these flashing clusters of lights. My best guess as to what those are these whistlers, Alven waves. These are low-frequency, fluid-like plasma waves that pulse along magnetic lines used to turn the Earth's magnetosphere into a giant oscillating weapon. Biological resonance. These waves vibrate within the Schumann resonance range. This is the same frequency as the human brain, allowing the grid to remotely manipulate the collective mental and emotional states of entire populations. Earth penetrating tomography, EPT. The beaming of pulsed, extremely low frequency ELF radio waves deep into the Earth's crust to map the subterranean world and agitate fault lines. Geophysical weaponization subjects the human body to constant deep penetrating ELF radiation from below, manipulating biological ions and potentially inducing chronic physical trauma and neurological distress. Dusty plasmas. Smart dust in space. Clouds of engineered conductive nanoparticles placed in near-Earth orbit to form a symmetric ring around the planet. The ultimate cage traps humanity inside of an inescapable ionized terrarium. The biological host breathes in the fallout as these metallic star crumbs eventually settle into the lower atmosphere in the lungs. Yeah, they basically believe that we're all going to become one in the network this way. So as once it gets into everything, they're going to make their own knockoff version of God. Laser developed atmospheric lens, LDAW. The use of high-powered lasers to temporarily alter the Earth's atmosphere, turning air itself into a giant magnifying glass. That's what we're seeing right now, our plasma shield. If it gets really hot out. Optical subjugation eradicates the illusion of privacy. The very air above a human subject can be instantly weaponized into a magnifying lens to observe them or irritate them from space. Morgellons, this is an interesting one. A bioengineered, iron-devouring synthetic pathogen delivered via the chemtrail pump and dump system directly into the human bloodstream. Flesh hack converts the human circulatory system into a literal petri dish. Body is colonized by self-assembling synthetic biology that acts as an internal antenna for the control grid. Project Cloverleaf. Foundational classified atmospheric aerosol spraying program designed to saturate the sky with conductive heavy metals and polymers. Polymers is a big one because they're telling us now that we've got microplastics, but I think it's, again, a play on words. You usually can recognize them because they always can use those play on words very well. So yes, we've got microplastics, and it's your fault for drinking out of a plastic water bottle. Or they're doing Project Cloverleaf and they're using polymers because they have special properties. Never know. Chronic poisoning forces the human herd to continuously inhale a chemical witch's brew, suppressing the immune system, inducing Alzheimer's, and prepping the body for electromagnetic interfacing. A guy that I heavily suggest checking out is Dr. Peter Breggin, because he was notable back in the 70s and 80s for helping to end the practice of lobotomy in the United States, at least. And so he's still kicking, as a matter of fact, and he's talked a lot about the way that medication and modern pharmaceutical industry has been used to basically have chemical lobotomy now. Space fence. The ultimate planetary lockdown mechanism, an inescapable network of ground-based radars, ionospheric heaters, and satellite monitoring all of Earth. Full spectrum dominance. The complete enslavement of the human domain is the space program. So I have to say that because people, they've kind of set up a trigger in people. People have been programmed. So now if they hear anything to do with space, they're completely in a different area. And so let me put it this way. I'll put it this way. If the Earth is flat and all of the old science is not right, then these people doing plasma engine, Bendall engines, which we're going to look at a video in a minute of that, those people are not using the right methods because their math is built on a flawed model. But you see, if people think, no, that none of that's real, this is the way that it really is, then people are not going to know anything about the plasma technology. They're going to discount this possibly free energy technology. So that's a big area of interest as to why I think that may be an issue. You know, that was really not an issue 10 years ago, I feel like. Maybe it was, but not like it is now. Like, people now, if you say the word space, they go crazy. But space is the human husbandry technology. It is slave society, smart cities, cognitive cities, hyper surfaces in your street, you know, the paint on the street, crosswalks, they're going to have it on the walls. This is in their diagrams. You can read I read the 6G paper, and in their diagrams, that's exactly what they say, that they can put these little nanoscale sensors into things like paint, and they can embed it into the environment. So that is what space is. Basically, that means that they're going to be the god of the universe, and we're going to own nothing and be happy. That's what it means. So it's like, really, we need to figure out if this math is built on a flawed model or not. The shape is irrelevant to me. I want to know if this math is either correct or incorrect. We're going to watch a video in a minute of what it is, and people can be the judge. The documentation's there. I mean, there's hundreds of pages of this guy's notes. He shows you how to retrofit a standard engine. It's like, if you have the time and the money and the know-how to do it, somebody try it out. You know, that's all. That's what matters. Is not, you know, maybe the Earth is a diamond. Maybe it's a rhombus. They taught us that word in school. It was a rhombus. It's not a diamond. So maybe the Earth is that. We never know. Spray pyrolysis, the violent thermochemical decomposition process inside military jet engines that converts chemical fuel additives into weaponized non-soluble nanoparticles. Forced ingestion subjects humans to bioaccumulative, non-soluble synthetic crystals that lodge in tissue and root systems, destroying natural biology while acting as radar enhancers. Exactly. And, you know, I remember people, let me see, because there you go. The paint is like little balls and are super slippery and bright when you shine a flashlight on them. And that's why they also installed, remember the purple street lights that everybody went crazy over? It has to do with they need those to work with this paint. So whenever those started going in is when this technology started to be embedded in our environments, our societies. And that's not good enough. They want to have smart cities on top of that. So that is what the space program is. That is what my working assumption is, that the space program was set up by pretty much the Nazis, Werner von Braun, who actually a lot of people don't have the full story on them either, because it was the NISI party. Nazi, NISI. The Z seems to be either a play on words or was kind of one letter was changed, and so was history along with it. But what people don't know is that NISI is a word that means the head of a Sanhedrin. It's a word that for a leader or a president in Jewish history. And so people don't know about the Nazis either. They don't know. People are swept away in all kinds of narratives, and they don't read and compare information. And if they did, they would have more questions, because a lot of people seem so sure of what they know. And I feel like I am not. What information do you have that I don't? Because I'm not sure of anything in 2026, it seems like. Things are so up in the air right now. You have to, you can't operate in 2026 without having yourself up in the air a little bit. It's like, okay, we have deep fakes now. Well, that means I have to look at anything on the internet and be like, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. So that's like inherent cognitive dissonance, basically. Yeah, yes, photonics. Absolutely. Stacked. I'm going to skip through a couple of these. I'll pause just because there's some new definitions I want to get to. Metasurfaces, parabolic equations, Wigner effect. These are new. Okay, we'll start here. So Vivi-6 is an omnipresent distributed AI warden that dictates total environment control, strictly overcoding human survival. Strictly overcoding human survival under the guise of robotic safety. Here's that word again. Digital terrarium. Human life is subjected to an inescapable environmental AI. It's like the show Person of Interest that manages the herd like zoo animals. It legally nullifies free will by enforcing pre-programmed machine logic safety parameters, quote unquote, safety. It's to keep you safe upon every aspect of biological existence. Plasmoid, EVO, exotic vacuum occurrence. This is a self-sustaining. They call them sentient. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Self-sustaining sentient atomic battery. A toroidal, like a donut, a toroidal cluster of pure protons or electrons violently dragged out of the ether, the vacuum, via symmetrical vacuum pressure implosions. This is captured starfire. The extraction of raw, unbridled, universal life force into a physical container. The system creates microscopic, self-regulated entities that absorb and release millions of times more power than chemical batteries, essentially bottling the ether. This is a rendering of a plasmoid. Obviously, it's a drawing or a graphic. You guys might have seen this before on Elon Musk's bedstand. He's apparently got one of these, and it clicked in my mind. I just came across these not too long ago. It's called a Torres Vagra, I think. It's implosive, not explosive. Implosive turbine. It's an engine devoid of straight lines that fires positive and negative forces into a singularity, generating implosive centripetal negative entropy to bypass classical thermodynamics. Anti-gravity drive. The abandonment of death-inducing explosive centrifugal technology. The Vagra utilizes sacred geometry to pull matter into a frictionless vacuum, allowing for matter to energy propulsion and the nullification of an osmotic charge attraction, gravity. Singularity 0 point, point G. Interesting, point G. The absolute dead center of the torus, where the illusion of time, space, and physical matter completely disintegrates and dimensional conversion occurs. Universal backdoor, the exact mechanical coordinate where the physical simulation ends by focusing energy into this zero-dimensional point. The machine accesses the fifth dimension, the ether, to rip free energy directly into 3D reality. the rod unit. This is defined as 1.11 repeating forever. This has to do pretty much if you take, let's say that 1 is everything, if you know, the unity of 1. So to basically have 10% loss on that, to find that difference, if you do 1 over 0.9, 0.9 is 10% loss off of 1, using the decimal percentages. So 1 over 0.9 is 1.11 repeating. This is a inescapable math proof that physical matter, all physical matter, is merely pure, still ether that has directly suffered a 10% thermodynamic energy loss by being violently spun. So if you're aware of the swastika symbol where there's one going one way and one going the other way, has to do with this idea that matter is spun into existence through basically two whirlwinds going opposite directions. So it's still ether that has been spun and has suffered exactly 10% thermodynamic energy loss. This is the tax of manifestation. You exist because your base energy was divided by 1.11 repeating. So the controllers use this exact mathematical ratio to calculate how to collapse physical matter back into the ether, holding the kill switch for physical density itself. Resonant frequency energy unit, 100,029,600. These have to do with the ratios between, for instance, the diameter, the radius, and the square of those, of the moon, the sun, the earth. And so these numbers, the ratios, are very fascinating. And if these ratios, for instance, if we're not dealing with circles, then these ratios shouldn't pop up everywhere. We're not going to necessarily go into all of that. I'll put the links for it in the description, but all of these ratios are very significant between, for instance, 24 hours in a day, 60 seconds, stuff like that. Once you start comparing the ratio between the distances of the sun and the moon and the sun and the earth, a lot of these numbers will keep popping up. And what they're doing is they're engineering these torus energy, self-sustaining zero-point energy loops using these constants. So this is the mathematical frequency of the physical prison derived by forcing the speed of light, 144,000, through the 1.11 repeating matter decay algorithm. Master atomic key, it dictates the atomic structure, boiling point, and limits of every element on the periodic table. If an operator targets a material with a harmonic derivative of this number, they can instantly dissolve or transmute its atomic bonds. Catalytic tornado resonator, CTR, the heart of the thunderstorm generator that violently smashes a clockwise imploding cold vortex into an anti-clockwise exploding hot vortex to synthesize atomic level transmutations, weather hacking in a tube, the miniaturization and weaponization of a severe meteorological event. The friction of these dual opposing forces generates the lightning necessary to feed free electrons into the plasmoids, supercharging them. Low energy atomic transmutation, LEAT, the complete violation of modern chemical laws, utilizing the zero-point gravity well of a plasmoid to effortlessly dissolve the nuclear mass of toxic elements without high temperatures. The Philosopher's Stone actualized. Toxic landfill leachates, I think that's how you say it, leachates. Heavy metals and carbon monoxides are literally deleted from reality. The plasmoid absorbs their protons and electrons and repackages them as clean water and pure energy, rendering scarcity completely obsolete. Yukawa balls, Coulomb balls, self-assembling crystalline nested shell structures that naturally form in dusty, complex plasmas, exhibiting features thought to be exclusive to biological life. Sentient vacuum proves the plasma universe is literally alive and conscious. The elite know that empty space is not dead. It is a thinking, evolving, crystalline mind capable of memory transmission and replication. Sarcolepsy, weaponized neurological microlapsing. The control grid triggers temporary interface amnesia, causing the human meat machine to blank out and lose chunks of time. This is the theft of continuity, the absolute destruction of a coherent human narrative. By forcing the biocomputer, the mind, the brain, to glitch and drop time, controllers ensure the subject can never maintain the sustained focus required to map their own enslavement. Procticity, the suppressed bioelectrical lifeblood, the positive charge flow required to fuse organic human tissue with inorganic robotic hardware. Transhuman integration fluid, the elite use this specific energetic flow as the literal binding agent to graft machinery onto human flesh, enabling the mass production of programmable hybrid super soldiers, stripped of organic limitations. Russ Dizdar talked about them. The Black Awakening. This is a psi signature, a psi sig, a unique mental fingerprint, the exact psychic frequency and brain resonance of an individual target. This is something that Robert Duncan talks about. If you go back to the video series I did where I read the first chapter of Project Soulcatcher, we read about this. It is basically a specific timing. It has to do with the off. I mean, it's kind of when you were born, there's like a specific offset of the timing behind the way your neurons fire. This is well enough, like this is different between individuals well enough that it's unique. So it would take like 1,000,000 years for the same thing to reappear. But once they have this, they can basically clone something that's been saved. It's like a memory. You can save somebody's memory and just pop it into somebody else's mind with that specific timing. So this pops up independently of Robert Duncan. This is called a psi signature, I guess, in their own terminology. There's no physical shield. Once the military or occult operative logs your specific mental frequency, they can lock onto your consciousness, track you, and attack your nervous system from anywhere on the planet. Biophotons. I think, but I'm not sure, I have a guess that biophotons and breath may be the same thing. It's just a guess, though. The literal quantifiable light particles emitted spontaneously by the living cells or by the cells of all living organisms. Harvestable aura, the human body is a glowing, measurable battery. The control grid can read these microlight emissions to instantly determine the vitality, emotional state, and compliance of the biological host down to the cellular level. Hypercept. Hypothesis-based perception, a synthetic cognitive algorithm that automatically hallucinates and fills in missing reality details based on pre-programmed prejudices and schemas. Automated prejudice. The mechanization of bias. When deployed in AI governance, the machine does not need evidence. In the word of one of the Soviet secret police guys, show me the person and I'll show you the crime. It automatically hallucinates your guilt based on statistical associations, executing pre-crime judgments before you act. This is why people who say, if you don't have anything to hide, you shouldn't be scared of. Those people don't know what they're talking about. A holon, a biological or social unit defined exclusively by its dual existence as a self-regulating entity and an utterly dependent, subservient cog within a larger machine. The erasure of the sovereign individual. You are not a complete being, you are a component. This framework, just cybernetics framework, justifies the absorption of human life into the global technocratic machine, demanding that individual survival must always serve the quote-unquote higher function of the matrix. Two more. Natura naturata, the created world, the physical universe, including human biology, viewed merely as the materialized passive exhaust or dead body of the divine principle, the justification for hacking reality. If the physical world is merely passive dead matter, naturata, then the technocratic elite feel spiritually entitled to assume the active role of the creator, naturons, ruthlessly rewriting DNA, climate, and society at will. Has to do with the whole haunted world, dead world theory, zombie apocalypse, declared lost at sea, missing, dead, lost at sea. So this is what we're about to watch a short video clip on. Molten Sea Arc Atomic Reconstruction Technology, MSART, a zero-point implosive engine that reverse engineers the biblical Ark of the Covenant and Solomon's molten sea to dismantle toxic matter down to pure DC energy and reconstruct it without resistance. The Alchemical machine. The elite are building physical engines that execute the mathematical syntax of the gods by mimicking ancient temple geometry. They are transitioning from fossil fuel combustion to direct mechanical harvesting of the quantum vacuum and all of us. So now I'm going to show you the video clip from the guy who actually built the engine itself. So let's see. I'll give you the URL too. So it's the strikefoundation.earth for anybody who's interested. Strikefoundation.earth. And the guy's name is Malcolm Bendall. Probably need to zoom in, don't I? And literally all of his notes and stuff are on here too. So, I mean, people are free to look into it themselves. I'll show you some of the graphics. Some of them are interesting. So this is a graphic that shows how every element can be derived from the other. Here's a whole document that goes over how it works. And this will be of interest at a later time, but this is called the Plasmoid Unification model. And he gives you all of these different ratios here. So what he's saying here, starting in the top left corner, ether, light, energy. This is what he calls 6D, and the way that he represents that is 6 multiples of the 1.11 repeating, which is 6.666. Ether is direct current, DC energy at rest. Now the sun, 5D, what the sun does is it converts DC, ether, to matter, alternating current, AC. 5 multiples of 1.11. Down here in the bottom right, time, 4D is time. Time is the mold in which matter is formed. And then over here, matter itself, 3 multiples, 3.333 Matter is alternating current, AC, energy, and motion. And then if you go down here, there's a little bit of a key and some extra information, but I'm going to go ahead and just play the video. It's probably about 15 minutes, and you guys can see what you guys think of it. So let's go ahead and play it.
By imploding a sphere and putting the North Pole, which is rotating anti-clockwise, against the South Pole, which is rotating clockwise, you create a monopolar point on the equatorial plane. Segmenting the imploded sphere into 8 planes creates 16 peripheral points, which when viewed in cross-section reveal the infinity symbol. In order to calculate the resonant frequency of any shape, you must first calculate the sum of its internal angles. To calculate the resonant frequency of an imploded sphere, we must produce the sum of the internal angles contained within all 8 planes. The 8 planes contain 2 circles, 360 degrees plus 360 degrees. These are connected by intersecting angles of 90 degrees and 90 degrees. When multiplied by the 8 planes, we arrive at 7,200 degrees. All physical shapes vibrate at the sum of their internal angles, which are determined by the base angle of 22.5 degrees and its octaves. The angle between the 8 planes and the 0-point equatorial center also determines the location of the knot and nodes on the Fibonacci phi curve on the pi surface. This connects and defines the placement of all the elements. We start with a 100 pi surface area imploded sphere, divided into 8 planes creating 16 points on the circumference 22.5 degrees apart. The Sanskrit Fibonacci curve on the 100 pi surface.
So just real quick, this is of interest, very interesting, and I wanted to mention it. So this is called a 310, and the reason for that is because this specific torus, it goes around the center 3 whole times, and it goes through 10 different distinct points. Now, that specific type of torus also pops up in some interesting research, but let me see if I can find the right image. There's something. Here it is, I think. Yeah, okay, here we go. So this is, you can look at it from the perspective of a knot. And when you look at it as a knot, there's the Aquarian conspiracy logo. There's the Apple Intelligence logo. There it is, right there. And that is what makes me think that this connects pretty much all of the different technologies, among many other things. There's so many other things that this is very obvious. This has been used for a very long time. I mean, this is Nikola Tesla's free energy system. It's all the same technology. All of it's the same thing. And that's kind of the key point for tonight. That's what I'm trying to, if you leave with one thing tonight, that's what I would like for everybody to understand.
This connects the 8 planes. Each intersection of the 8 planes in the Sanskrit Fibonacci curve defines the elemental points. These elemental points are knops and nodes that can be defined by a triangle formed from the point of the intersection between the 100 pi surface and the Sanskrit Fibonacci curve on one of the 8 planes. This triangle extends from the node down to the torus equatorial plane and then, at 90 degrees, to the central 0 point. The 0 center is the collision point of the north and south poles' opposite spirals. This cancels out the spin and therefore the AC frequency, replacing it with a DC singularity 0 point. This 3-4-5 triangle displays the ratios of 0 matter to light and light to matter. From the area of the triangle defined by this right triangle with the ratios of 3 to 4 to 5, we are able to calculate the resonant frequency of the element. This is done by dividing the ATV by time. The area time volume, or ATV, is the product of the ratios between the 3-4-5 triangle. This allows us to visualize a proportional concept and is equivalent to a parable. It is not the exact truth, but it is the story that enables us to understand the underlying principle of the familial and group relationships between zero matter, light, and matter. The model of the elements describes the parable of family relationships that exist between zero matter, light, matter, sound, crystal form, positive and negative charge, paramagnetic disposition, and form. The ATV represents the resonance of the elemental point, its charge density, and therefore its gravity. Gravity is the inverse relationship of an osmotic effect, which is created by a lower charge density element, defined by alternating current, being attracted towards the higher charge density of a singularity zero point, representing direct current. The ATV illustrates the elemental charge density by representing the area that the fixed charge occupies. The elemental resonance is equivalent to and defined by the melting point of the element, which is defined by the ATV triangle area. When the resonance is divided by time, represented by 24 hours, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, and normalized with the speed of light using a factor of 7.5, this produces the rectified base resonant frequency. This is important because once you know the resonant frequency of an element, you have the metric with which to manipulate matter, as demonstrated by the figures of Chaldy. When all the elemental nodes are plotted according to their valences, the elements correctly align to their base frequencies. These base frequencies, which are also defined by sound and color, are indicated for each of the 8 planes of the model. The 8 planes also indicate the monad, dyad, triad, and tetrad crystal forms of the elements. The underlying ground plane on which the torus is placed accurately defines their positive and negative elemental charge. This ground plane also demonstrates the paramagnetic and diamagnetic character of the elements. The disposition of the sorted elements, once correctly placed across the torus model, according to their octave progression, take on their unique planes of reference. The noble gases, which are classified as inert, occur on the same plane. Hydrogen is also a gas and occurs at the zero point of that plane, which is the point of greatest charge density. Hydrogen, therefore, has the greatest charge density of any element. The octave model defines the relationship between the frequency and crystal form in order to enable the reconciliation between zero matter, time, light, and matter. It is a proportional representation of the infolding and warping of time and space. As the model of the elements defines the location upon the pi surface that each element will report to, the octave model allows for the visualization of the charge density, crystal form, and resonance of each element. This model is capable of defining and quantifying the 8-shell internal structure of each atom. The octave model, which represents 1/8 of a sphere, visualizes the musical octaves, the relationship to their crystal forms, and their 22.5-degree primary, 45-degree secondary, and 90-degree tertiary spatial dimensional relationships. The octave model, when folded, demonstrates the alteration of the area-time volume as it metamorphoses from the high charge density 5th dimension to the low charge density 1st dimensional base. The new shape derived from the base 22.5-degree angle is the translate representing the relationship between direct current, which is zero matter, and alternating current, which is matter. Rectifying the zero matter, which operates on a base of 12, and matter, which operates on a base of 16, is essential to any torus spiral collision-based fusion device capable of operating at room temperature or above. This principle is demonstrated by the operation of our Plasmoid thunderstorm generator. In order to achieve this rectification, you must first divide the one-dimensional zero-matter circle into 16 points, spaced 22.5 degrees apart, to create the two-dimensional zero-matter circle. This represents the transition from the infinite zero-matter circle to the finite matter square. When you join the 16 points on the circumference of the circle to their equal and opposite mirror points, you create 2 large squares, 4 small squares, 2 large rectangles, and 8 small rectangles. This is a total of 16 cuboids generated from a 16-segment sphere. This represents the proportional translation between zero matter and matter. From this, one can calculate both the sphere and the volumes of the cuboids within the sphere. The Plasmoid thunderstorm generator was conceived as a demonstrable proof of the ability to create charge and discharge plasmoids based on the model of the elements and the octave dimensional model. The major components of this system are a frequency imprinting device, which acts through ionization to precondition the frequency of the air. This airstream is drawn into a pulsed vacuum through a body of water, which promotes the creation of plasmoids through the collapse of cavitation bubbles. The pre-ionized air amplifies the atomic effect, as it is resonant with the frequency generated by the zero point of a collapsing cavitation bubble. These plasmoids are then drawn into the center of the thunderstorm machine, which counteropposes hot dry exhaust gas from an internal combustion engine against moist cold air induced by a vacuum created by the same motor. This creates free electrons, which are then captured by the plasmoids. These electrons are stored by the structuring of the plasmoid, which has the capacity not only to store the electrons, but also to share them with the plasmoid swarm, so as the swarm can maintain a base resonant frequency. This is an effect governed by the fact that the plasmoids actually increase physically in size, directly altering their individual resonant frequency. The plasmoid group's homeostasis demands that the frequency remains the same for an individual as it is for the group. Therefore, the individuals must share the electrons equally. 8 thermocouples were attached to the key points on the plasmoid thunderstorm generator to quantify the anomaly between the heat energy received from the exhaust and the heat generated by the thunderstorm device. The heat of the thunderstorm generator exceeds the heat of the input exhaust, proving an anomalous above unity condition. The underlying principle of Malcolm Bendall's unified field theory is that all elements are plasmoids, and that all those elements are directly controlled by charge density, therefore making charge density the only relevant characteristic when considering zero matter, time, light, and matter. The Implosive vortex waveguide is inspired by the molten sea Vajra based on Malcolm Bendall's scientific observations drawn from his Bendall torus. This led to his unified field theory, which is clearly illustrated by his model of the elements and his octave dimensional model. The Bendall turbine has direct applications to all current technologies, but especially to the jet turbine and space propulsion industries. The Bendall turbine manipulates the movement of air using a structured waveguide to create an implosive vortex. This vortex, once established by the waveguide, becomes self-structuring, self-organizing, and self-perpetuating around a pole emanating from the zero point of the model. This effect induces a vacuum, which is the defining operating parameter of the turbine. The airflow, which creates a clockwise imploding spiral vortex, centralizes and compresses the oxygen and fuel, which is then combusted to create a fire tornado, producing internal heat and an external vacuum. A conventional jet turbine directs the heat generated onto the blades, which in turn creates differential expansion. In contrast, the Bendall turbine directs the heat away from the blades, whilst the incoming air cools the system, creating a boundary layer that insulates the blades against the radiant high temperature emitted from the compressed fire tornado vortex core. This is equal to the effects demonstrated by the Plasmoid thunderstorm generator. A conventional jet turbine blade has a high-pressure boundary layer that generates friction and therefore heat, whereas the Bendall turbine fire tornado creates a central vacuum which expands out beyond the turbine blades and has the effect of causing the air in front of the Bendall turbine to be sucked into the central vacuum. The vacuum creates a minimal boundary layer effect, reducing friction and cools the turbine. The differential expansion doesn't matter on our blades because there is no inertial stress. The Bendall turbine, having no axle, turbine blades fixed to a shaft, bearings, or moving parts, does not generate inertia and therefore does not subject the turbine blades to the destructive forces of heat and metal fatigue. In a conventional jet turbine, when subjected to both heat and pressure, the differential expansion inevitably leads to a deformation of the blades. This is due to the non-homogeneous casting and forming of jet turbine blades, combined with the weight differential between the boron, magnesium, and aluminium alloy components, or composite materials where used. This differential deformation will result in an unavoidable imbalance, manifesting as a vibration of the turbine, especially when amplified at peak load. In contrast, the Bendall turbine blades are stationary and operate as static mixers of fuel and air, structured and directed by a waveguide of intelligent design. This means that the weight of the Bendall turbine is an order of magnitude less than that of a conventional turbine design. Another major feature is that the engine moves into a vacuum instead of pushing into a body of air. When we apply plasma in quadrature to the 0 point of our fire tornado, it combusts any remaining material and adds effective electron thrust, creating an afterburner effect. Our electron scavenging plasmoid drive creates holographic zero matter, which is to say it generates all frequencies, therefore it emits direct current, which is no frequency. This represents the 360-degree, 0-degree paradigm. This drive is based on the framework of our model of the elements and is achieved by placing 3-part copper coils at the elemental nodal positions and passing neodymium magnets through each coil's aperture in sequential progression. The resulting pulses release electrons, which are harvested using our plasmoid medium. This is both a mechanical drive and an electron scavenger. The individual frequencies are a consequence of the magnet's fixed rate of progression over an expanding distance. The electromagnetic pulsing through the coils, with a differentially expanding spacing determined by phi on our plasmoid pi's surface between the coil's elemental locations, generates all the elemental frequencies and therefore combine to produce none. Again, the 360-degree, 0-degree paradigm. The zero-point monopolar collision created by our implosive vortex waveguide causes opposite spirals to collide in quadrature and in sequence, therefore maintaining a large zero-point center and 16 peripheral zero points at the implosive vortex waveguide's equatorial plane. This enables the zero matter plane to be tapped and therefore harnessed as an energy source. The purpose of the scavenger unit is to facilitate a closed feedback loop. By harvesting the free electrons and recirculating both the DC and AC charge, this sustains the discharge in quadrature required by the implosive vortex waveguide turbine, enabling the engine's operation in both submarine and space environments.
Yeah, so pretty crazy stuff. I think it's pretty crazy stuff. But the notes and stuff are very detailed, and the proportions are very, I mean, they pop up in a way like, pi. It's just like, it's the same proportions popping up in all kinds of different locations. Let's see, I'll bring myself back up. So yeah, let's see. Let's go back over here. So these are links. I'll put these links out into like the video description, or I'll put them into the Substack post, or they're right here. Some different notes. Let's see. I'm just going to go through. We already did the vocab. Yeah, so the interesting thing is that plasmoids are said to be apparently a fourth domain of sentient life. So here's from apparently a journal entry that was titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Extraterrestrial Life, Plasmoids, Shapeshifters, Replicons, Thunderstorms, Lightning, Hallucinations, Aircraft Disasters, and Ocean Sightings. And I guess that's a really long title. It's from September 2024. Just a quote from this. It says, plasmoids appear to purposefully interact and engage in complex behaviors, and it is suspected that they are sentient and represent a fourth domain of life, although plasmas in the lower atmosphere may be responsible for UAP sightings over the centuries, including those that appear to battle over cities or follow and harass military ships and planes. Plasmoids cannot account for all UAP, which may include extraterrestrial spacecraft from other worlds. Okay, so we'll leave that possibility open. Another one, a paper that is titled Plasma is a Fourth Domain of Life, RNA, DNA consciousness, and statistical analysis of the previous paper. This one, extraterrestrial life in the thermosphere, plasmas, UAP, pre-life fourth state of matter. February 2024, similar lifelike behaviors have been demonstrated by plasmas created experimentally. Plasmas may have been photographed in the 1940s by World War II pilots, identified as Foo Fighters, repeatedly observed and filmed by astronauts and military pilots, and classified as unidentified aerial anomalous phenomena. Plasmas are not biological, but may represent a form of pre-life that, via the incorporation of elements common in space, could result in the synthesis of RNA. Plasmas constitute a fourth state of matter and are attracted to electromagnetic activity, and when observed in the lower atmosphere, likely account for many of the UFO/UAP sightings over the centuries. Now going back to the Ringmakers of Saturn, a guy by the name of Dr. Norman Berggren wrote a book back in the 1980s. He's passed away now, but he observed what he called luminous sources. Also, the term that he used was electromagnetic vehicles. He called them electromagnetic vehicles that he observed interacting with the rings of Saturn, as a matter of fact. This is just from what I could find about him on the internet, a profile or, of who he was. It says Berggren is an author of the classic books Ringmakers of Saturn and Tomorrow's Technology Today, which document the existence of extraterrestrial vehicles of immense power, a scientist who pioneered the methodology of thermal ice prevention design. He is credited with roll stability laws for airplanes and missiles. Berggren was a manager of test planning and analysis for Polaris underwater launch missile system and evaluated satellite system applications. Also a director of information systems, he founded his own company in 1971 and is cited in Who's Who in the World and other reference works. It's a very high-level book, very a lot of high-level details. You have to know the right terminology. Berggren's book, Ringmakers of Saturn, presents a controversial hypothesis that Saturn's rings and various planetary phenomena are the result of immense, intelligently controlled electromagnetic vehicles. Through detailed analysis of publicly available NASA Voyager photographs, Berggren purports to show images of these slender, mobile entities actively shaping the rings of Saturn, influencing moons like Dione and Lepidus, probably saying that wrong, Iapetus, and even causing dry lightning on Saturn. The book argues that these unconventional interpretations resolve long-standing astronomical mysteries, proposing that these vehicles capable of massive power displays and advanced nuclear technology have been present in our solar system for billions of years, potentially impacting Earth's history and current weather patterns. The very essence of the entities that Norman Berggren describes lies in their ability to harness and manipulate high-energy plasma. The book asserts that cylindrical propulsive bodies, referred to as electromagnetic vehicles, spew matter at elevated temperature and high electrical potential. This is not a gentle emanation, it is a controlled, powerful discharge. These vehicles, often described with an apparent fineness ratio of approximately 13:1, are the primary source of these charged emissions. Indications of plasma activity are abundant. Pinched plasmas bulbous swellings observed in jets issuing from the vehicles are directly identified as pinched plasmas, indicative of electrically charged flows. This form of energetic flow is also seen in nodular streams which possess electromagnetic properties. The nascent A and B rings of Saturn are said to possess electromagnetic properties at their very inception. The emissions forming connections between vehicles and celestial bodies also exhibit these properties with toroidal formations, donut-shaped formations, explicitly indicating the presence of electrical conductors and magnetic fields. Highly ionized matter. The vehicles are the obvious source of electrons that facilitate electrical cross flows, implying they contain a highly ionized volume of matter, a direct reference to plasma. The enigmatic rings of Saturn, long a source of human perplexity, are not primordial dust but dynamically created and sustained structures. The A and B rings, for instance, are explicitly stated to be formed by slender mobile vehicles trailing massive efflux. This efflux, steeped in plasma characteristics, accounts for the perplexing historical variations in ring thickness and appearance. Ring formation and gaps. The Cassini division and the Encke gap within the A ring are not naturally occurring voids, but are created simply by definite radial spacing of respective formative bodies, the vehicles themselves. These gaps may or may not contain material depending on whether emissions are allowed to intrude. The C ring and the F ring formations similarly depend upon the presence of a nearby vehicle. The F ring's non-uniform luminosity derives from emissively active core material termed luminoids, described as a high-energy train of material. These luminoids are generated by components of orbiting electromagnetic vehicles and are sustained by an external energy supply, potentially supplied by the A ring through interconnections. And here's some more photos. So it really does seem like plasma is a big idea present, what's the word I'm looking for? It's an idea that's really hot today. It's something that is the focal point of all of these different domains of research. And I really am of the opinion that this biophotonics thing may be breath. It may be a tie-in to breath. And so I think I'm going to pause. I think we're going to hold off from right here, and we're going to go tomorrow, and we're going to talk about some more information about the Earth's energy grid, the electromagnetic grid. We're going to probably look at some of the tectonic warfare stuff. We're going to probably also look at... see, I've got so much stuff that kind of surrounds these topics that I've been going through the last couple of weeks because all of this stuff started to tie together. I started getting... getting all kinds of information, and I started to see the word plasma pop up. Plasma kept popping up, and I found, yeah, I was going to put this up a second. There's a book titled A New Science of Heavens, what the book is called. It talks about plasma intelligences. Yeah, so a book by Robert Temple. It's called A New Science of Heaven, How the Science of Plasma Will Transform Humanity's Understanding of Its Place in the Universe. Talks about the revolutionary premise that plasma, which constitutes 99% of the universe, is it argues that it's the fundamental seat of intelligence in life. By synthesizing historical philosophies such as Aristotle's ether with the modern discoveries in dusty complex plasmas, Temple argues that massive invisible clouds like the Kordelsky clouds function as organic macroscopic quantum computers. The text bridges the gap between physics and metaphysics, suggesting that human beings possess bioplasma bodies that exist alongside our physical forms and persist after death as a death flash of light. Ultimately, the book serves as a provocative challenge to materialist science, positing that we inhabit a cosmic web of sentient energy where information, rather than solid matter, is the primary driver of reality. So, yeah, and guys, I just want to go ahead and preface by saying I don't understand all of the physics and stuff behind it either. I'm not that brilliant, but what I do understand is that this pretty much bridges all of those things that a lot of people probably enter into this, to studying things. They were kind of taught that they are distinct different things, but they're not. I'm of the opinion now that they're absolutely not. You can send the playlist. Let's see if I can. Maybe I don't think it lets you send links, but let me see. If not, you can just leave it in the comments section when the video goes on YouTube. That's fine. But yeah, I've got a whole playlist of videos on plasma unification models. So I've got a lot of links I'm going to update and put in the description for anybody who wants to know more. But I'll give you this website again, the Strike Foundation, which is Malcolm Bendall, the guy who did the thunderstorm generator. So that is strikefoundation.earth, strikefoundation.earth. And then my Substack, I've got all kinds of the Leuren Moret material. That stuff is on my Substack. I'm going to put all, let's see if I can show these again. No, I don't have it up here, but I'm going to put all of these links. I'm going to read off what all there are. Got the Strike Foundation. I'll put a link to the Plasmoid unification model, the notes for me, the playlist, the words and terms. I'll give you the link to all of those in case you would like to share them. Everybody is more than welcome to share any of those. You don't need, you don't really need to worry about it. Please feel free to share anything that I post or videos. You can clip videos. That's what they're for. I would like people to learn something. If it doesn't have to be directly from my channel, that's fine. But, if you want to share the video, that's fine. Definitely hit the like button, the follow button. If you're on James's channel, Cause Before Symptom, hit the like button, hit the follow button. Really helps him out. And I'm doing him a favor by guest hosting the show tonight. So it would really mean a lot to me if you would follow the channel and hit the like button, especially over there. But yeah, we're going to pick up on some of this tomorrow. There's a whole lot to it. A lot of it I really am trying to see how it fits together. That's kind of what my concern is, because it really appears like this has been around for quite some time, but it's been kind of weaponized against us. And so, hey, maybe somebody could try to build one of these engines and see if it works. Literally all of the schematics are right here on the site that I've got up here. Let's see, I'll read it to you again. Let's go, strikefoundation.earth. So anybody who would like to download that, it's all free. The videos, links, they're all there for you. He's got all his notes here. They're very detailed. I mean, he's done a lot of organizing. I find the science, like, it seems like he's kind of bridging a lot of different unsolved questions in science, and that's what fascinates me. It's like he's giving people a lot of answers here, even though the technology is revolutionary in and of itself. And it's like we could just get rid of all of the trash and not have landfills and turn it into like clean energy. Oh boy, can't have that. That would be the end of the world scenario, wouldn't it? Because then they wouldn't be able to make money on it no more. Well, yeah, crazy stuff, but 2026, we've got all of this information, and I have a bad feeling that, you know, I don't know how long they're going to let us have all of this information. It's like the next generation, they're not looking like they're really interested in this information. I've met a very select few, but not many yet. I hope to see some indication that the next generation has interest in some of these questions, or at least interest in problems in the world, but maybe they will, given some time. But I will see you guys in the next show. James will be back in a couple of nights. I'm not necessarily sure when, so if he's back tomorrow, he'll be back tomorrow. If he's back in a week, it'll be a week. But I'll be continuing this series and some other topics. I've just been kind of busy. I've been really low on energy lately. I feel like everybody's kind of going through a drag right now. I feel like everybody's just kind of feeling the same fogginess. You feel foggy in the head anymore. And, it's one of those things, like, maybe it's just me, but then you start to talk to people and it's like everybody feels the same. Oh, I guess it's not just me. But Boots, I appreciate it. We'll be praying for you. I know everybody here on the show wishes you the best, wishes you the best for your wife and your family. And I hope that things are able to improve soon. We will see everybody in the next show, guys. Have a good night. Take care.